Okay, we're going to multiply fractions now. Now, when we multiply fractions, make sure that I have fractions. If one of my numbers is not a fraction, you're going to see that in number 14. So if one of my numbers is not a fraction, make it a fraction. Just put a 1 at the bottom. But make sure you're dealing with fractions. And then there's two things we can do. One thing we can do is just multiply straight. I'm just going to multiply 2 times 5. That's going to give me 10. And then 3 times 3, that's going to give me 9. So for right now, my answer is 10 over 9. And then take a look at your signs. If the signs are the same sign, so 2 positives or 2 negatives, when I'm multiplying, then my answer is positive. If the signs are different, then my answer is negative. So here I'm multiplying a positive times a negative. Positive times a negative will give me negative. So negative 10 over 9. Okay, so first, right now, the way we will type a fraction, because on your homework, how am I going to type this, Mr. Leonzo? Well, there's a negative at the front, so negative sign. 10 over 9. For the fraction, we're going to use the backslash. See on your keyboard at the bottom on the right, there's the backslash. So I'm going to write 10 backslash 9. So that means negative 10 over 9. Don't forget the negative at the front, okay? Now, all together. Don't be adding any spaces. It is all together. Now we have a problem. It is okay if the number on the top, it is smaller than the number at the bottom. Okay, so the number on the top has to be smaller. Here we have a problem. What I'm going to do, let me divide. I'm gonna just say how many times does 9 go into 10? You guys have played The Price is Right? Right? How many times does 9 go into 10 without going over? I know 9 times 2 is 18. Okay, so that's too high. 9 times 1. Okay, because 9 times 1 is 9. So I'm able to have a 9 going into 10. Let me subtract this. 10 minus 9 is 1. Now this thing, every time we have our big number on the top, I'm going to break this into what we call the mixed number. Mixed number is a whole number and a fraction. So what I'm going to do, my answer, because I cannot have the big number in the top. So my answer was negative. So you do have to write the negative. So negative. Then I'm going to write this number up here. So negative 1. So to begin with, negative 1. Then add a space. So in my case, I'm going to emphasize there's a space. So when you type in your homework, when you're typing this out, do type a space. So negative 1 space. And then I'm going to use these two to make a fraction. I'm going to write 1 over 9. So don't forget the negative. Now 10 over 9 is basically 1 and 1/9. Don't forget the space in between. Okay, that's how you're going to type this. We're going to change this to mixed numbers, a whole numbered and a fraction, every time the number on the top is bigger than the number at the bottom. When it comes to our fraction, so right now that will be my answer, but one thing I want you to do, pay attention to the fraction. If you can simplify your fraction, so I see my numbers 1 and 9. Like I said, I'm just looking at my fraction, 1 over 9. If you can divide both numbers by the same thing, so if there's a number, I can divide them by to make them smaller, right? I'm not going to deal with decimals, so don't make them decimals, but if you can divide them by the same thing to make them smaller, by all means do so. Like, what do you mean, Mr. Leonzo? Imagine I had like 6 over 8. I could divide each of them by 2. And that gives me 3 over 4. So when you see a fraction, think, can I divide my numbers by the same thing? Is there a number I can divide them by to make them smaller? But it has to be the same thing on the top and the bottom. Now in our case, 1/9, nothing I can do, so that's it. Now let's take a look at question number 14. I said, make sure your numbers are fractions. So let me put a 1 at the bottom. Let me multiply my numbers on the top. 2 times 3 is 6. 1 times 2 is 2. It's a fraction, 6/2. Now, when it comes to signs, I have two negative signs. And I said, if the signs are the same, so in this case, two negatives, my answer is positive. So 6/2. I would just come over for right now. I would just write, oh, 6/2. But I have a problem. Okay, I have a problem. Um, the big number is on top. So I'm going to divide. 6 divided by 2. Okay, 2 goes into 6 3 times, right? Because 3 times 2 is 6. When I subtract this, I get 0. So I would just write 3 to begin with. You guys see where I got my 3. Now, my left off numbers, I would normally write 0/2, but 0/2 means it's not a fraction anymore. When my remainder, when this number is 0, my answer is not a fraction anymore. So my answer is just 3. Stops being a fraction. You could have seen it from my fraction here, 6 divided by 2, right? 6/2 is basically 6 divided by 2. Yeah, that's 3. Another way you guys could have seen it was probably, what if you divide each of these by 2? That gives you 3/1. Anything over 1 stops being a fraction. There's 3 ways. I'm showing you guys 3 different ways how we could have seen that this was not a fraction. Okay? So there you go.